Well, and this is a new assignment for this radio show. We are glad to have here a very important lawyer of the United States, Terry Collingsworth. He has been mentioned recently in a news published by the diario El Tiempo, and we are glad to have him here in our show. Thank you and welcome to our show, Terry.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to set the record straight on what El Tiempo has recently said.
Okay, why don't we start for the facts of this claim or this criminal case against you in the United States? What is who is the plaintiff here? Why what is your involvement in this case?
Yes. Well, first of all, the case against me in the United States, in Alabama, it is a civil case seeking damages. It's not a criminal case. And the background story is that I sued Drummond Company, which is a major coal producer in Colombia, but it is based in Alabama. And I sued Drummond after its three union leaders were murdered in 2001 by the AUC. And I alleged there, and now there's plenty of evidence to support it, that Drummond itself, its officers in Colombia, including Augusto Jimenez and Jose Miguel Linares, were responsible for those murders of the trade union leaders and lots of other murders of people that lived along the railroad line that went from La Loma to Puerto Drummond, where the AUC was patrolling. I ultimately filed three more cases against Drummond for those additional deaths on the railroad line. As part of our legal strategy, I reached out to some customers of Drummond. One was the government of the Netherlands, and a different one was a company in Japan that was looking to buy a portion of Drummond. Long story short, and it is a very long story because it's been going on for, more than 20 years. Drummond then sued me for defamation, claiming that I falsely said that Drummond was financing the AUC paramilitary groups. Now it is clear, after all the evidence is gathered, and in Colombia, there are criminal proceedings against Augusto Jimenez Linares and several other Drummond officers. It's very clear that I was not defaming Drummond. I was telling the truth. So that will ultimately be our defense. First of all, that what I said is true. And then second of all, under our defamation law, they have to show that I knew or recklessly disregarded the truth if it was false, but it's not false. So we're pretty confident. They then filed a second suit, and this is the one that I think El Tiempo really misrepresented. They sued me under a civil statute in the United States called RICO. And under RICO, they have to show that I engaged in a criminal enterprise for the purpose of extorting money from Drummond. Their theory is I made everything up. There's no facts supporting my claim that Drummond paid the AUC to kill their union leaders. I just made that up so that Drummond would feel like they had to pay me something to go away, to not sue them anymore. And that's just absurd. So unfortunately, the judge in our case said, well, there's enough evidence to go to a trial. He refused to throw the cases away. So we're going to face a jury in Alabama, and I fully expect to prevail.
You, in your earlier answer, you mentioned that you have sued Drummond in three cases, different cases. What this is these cases are ongoing, or there is a final judgment regarding each case?
Excellent question. Well, the first case was I brought on behalf of the widows and family members of the murdered union leaders. I brought that case in 2001. So by the time we got to trial in 2007, the paramilitary commanders who had the evidence that they were in fact partnered with Drummond, they had not yet started giving their confession testimony in the justice and peace process. They had just disarmed and they were preparing to do that. So the jury found that we did not have sufficient direct evidence that Drummond was responsible for those murders. So I think it's Drummond, of course, repeatedly cites to that and says, look, they didn't win that case. Well, we didn't have the testimony of the paramilitary groups that we now have, that they have testified. A second case we brought was on behalf of people who lived along the rail line, whose families, who had someone in their family murdered by the AUC that was patrolling along the rail line. That case was brought under a statute in the United States called the Alien Tort Statute. And the Supreme Court of the United States, after we filed the case, severely constricted how far that statute will apply. And they essentially said, well, these crimes did not occur in the United States. They occurred in Colombia. There's not sufficient activity in the United States to apply the statute. So they said the statute didn't apply. They did not say that there's no evidence to support that Drummond financed the AUC and the AUC murdered these people along the rail lines. There was a third case I brought with an identical theory on behalf of different people that Drummond financed the murders along the rail line. And I brought that under just Colombian wrongful death law, as we used in the Chiquita case successfully. That case, it's called Melo, M-E-L-O versus Drummond, is still pending. We do not yet have an outcome there, and I look forward to a victory in that case as we obtained in Chiquita.
Okay. Once, regarding the news published by the Diario El Tiempo, they mentioned a case of something about that you were incurring in bribing the witness, and they also mentioned the well-known person from here, Valledupar, whose name is Jaime Blanco Maya. They say that you pay him and another witness to testify against Drummond a lot of money. What can you say about these allegations?
Yes, that is the major misrepresentation, the major error in the El Tiempo story is that they claim that the case against me in the United States is because or to determine whether I bribed witnesses. And I told them the truth, and they ignored it and did not include it in their story. But the truth is that to get the AUC witnesses who were in prison doing their limited sentences, such as El Tigre and Samario, to get them to be able to testify, they told us that their families would be murdered if they testified against Drummond and the AUC, and that the only way they would testify is if we provided security for their families. So just like we do in the United States in mafia trials, organized crime trials, we created a witness protection program, and we moved the families of the witnesses to another location so they would be safe from violent retaliation and they could testify. That is absolutely the truth. Everybody involved in those transactions knows it, and it's only Drummond that, without knowledge of any discussion I had with El Tigre or Samario or their families, of course they're claiming I bribed them because they're very worried that their executives are about to go to prison for their role in financing the AUC. Regarding Jaime Blanco Maya, as Drummond well knows, we have documentation to show that we did provide funds for his lawyers because he was going to change his plea from innocent to helping with the conspiracy to murder the trade union leaders. And to do that, he needed additional attorney's fees. That is legal, ethical, and really morally necessary in our legal system. There's nothing wrong with that, and all of the documentation of that has been disclosed. And Jaime Blanco himself has testified twice that the funds I provided were for his lawyers so that he could change his plea and begin cooperating with the government.
Another allegation published in the news by El Tiempo says that the payment that you did through their Colombian lawyers here in Valledupar and other cities changed the previous testimony of those witnesses. What can you say about that? Because it says that this witness initially give one testimony is exonerating Drummond and other from these charges, but after the payment they changed their story. What could you say about that?
Well, first of all, there is a record that each of the witnesses at issue, primarily El Tigre and Samario, that they had told the prosecutors privately that Drummond was responsible. But in any public testimony initially, they refused to explicitly implicate Drummond because they were afraid for their families. They were basically what we would call refusing to self-incriminate because they were terrified that their families would be killed if they did so. So until their families were safe, they were withholding facts that they knew. Once their families were safe, then they told the entire story. And I understand under Colombian constitutional law, that is considered proper and ethical because you have a right to protect yourself when you testify. So it is not true that they changed their testimony. It is true that they withheld facts implicating Drummond until their families were safe. And I don't know about you or any of your listeners out there, but if I thought that the AUC, the brutal AUC, was going to murder my family for talking, I'd keep quiet until my family was safe, that's for sure.
Mr. Collingsworth, you were successful in suing Chiquita Brands, and this case becomes a sort of legal precedent regarding the involvement of U.S. multinationals in South America, especially in Colombia, in the Urabá zona. How do you think, or what do you think regarding the Drummond case in comparison with the Chiquita Brands? Why, in other words, why Chiquita Brands was successful this case and the Drummond case has not been so successful so far?
Oh, thank you for that. It's a very, very important question. The answer is that under U.S. law, it became a crime in 2001 to finance the AUC because it was designated a terrorist organization. In the case of Chiquita, they had a board of directors that were 12 or so individuals who were on this board. When it became a crime to be paying the AUC, only one board member had the courage to come forward and say, we can't do this anymore. We have to stop. This is a criminal act. And the other board members essentially said, no, it's fine. This is so profitable. Let's keep doing it. But that one board member went to our Justice Department and reported on Chiquita that they were committing this crime. And then Chiquita negotiated a criminal plea deal with the U.S. Department of Justice, and they were fined $25 million, and the victims got nothing. And that's when I sued Chiquita. So in the case of Chiquita, there was one board member who admitted the crime, and then we got all the documents showing that Chiquita had been paying the AUC for years, from 1995 to 2004 or so. With Drummond, they don't have a board of directors, so they don't have some outside person saying, hey, this was criminal, I don't feel comfortable doing this. They had Gary Drummond and his close advisors that he handpicked, and they all have consistently maintained that they never paid the AUC. They say they never met the AUC, and that is just nonsense. And that is what the courts in Colombia right now are exposing, that Drummond has not faced retribution yet because they were lying all of this time very consistently. Can you imagine in Cesar province, a major company operating there in the middle of the civil conflict, that's actually claiming they never even met an AUC operative. That's so blatantly false. And that's why I'm confident we're going to win our case here and that the Drummond officials in Colombia are going to be going to prison for a very long time.
Okay, you have been very open to answer our questions. I have just one final question for you. Have you thought to uh, um, playing anything against del diario de El Tiempo to file a suit or even to send a letter saying that they have sort of the wrongful information regarding this news?
Yes, in the past, I've sent at least one, maybe two letters because every time they report on Drummond, they seem to be very biased and in favor of helping Drummond by publishing false information. So yes, I will send a letter. In terms of suing them in Colombia for defamation, am up to past my eyeballs in work right now because I'm getting ready for the other Drummond cases here. And so that's my priority. My priority is to put the Drummond officials in prison and to win our claims up here. It's a minor distraction that El Tiempo has made a false statement, but I'm very happy that I will send a letter, but I'm very happy that you've given me the opportunity to clarify the record.
Mr. Collingsworth, thank you for being here in our show.
Thank you so much for reaching out to me. And anytime you want to discuss these issues, I'm happy to come back on. Thank you very much, Andreas.
Have a good day.
You too. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.